to establish the National Food Reserve Agency and for matters connected therewith, 2020 SB 189. The introduction. The bill for an act to establish the National Food Reserve Agency and for matters connected therewith, 2021 SB 189, was read for the first time in this hallowed chamber on Wednesday, 20th November 2019. The bill seeks to establish the National Food Reserve Agency for the purposes of storing food grains and other food commodities for strategic purposes. The Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, at its sitting on Tuesday, the 19th of May, 2020, read it for the second time and referred same to the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development for further legislative action. The agency, when established, will implement the overall National Food Reserve policy to ensure a reliable supply of designated commodities in the country. The recent mandate of the President during the COVID-19 pandemic to distribute 70,000 metric tons of grains from the Strategic Grains Reserve shows clearly how important it is for a country to have a food reserve agency. With the existence of the agency, the emergency food crisis will be taken care of, especially during the period of pandemic, as we are presently witnessing in the country. There will also be a reduction in post-harvest losses as silos, warehouses, equipment and ancillary facilities, and other suitable storage facilities will be installed and maintained. The membership of the committee is there. The methodology is also there, set out for want of time. Observations. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, with this agency in place, Nigeria will be taking the right step in the right direction as replicated in other countries, notably in Africa. Zambia has a food reserve act to manage national strategic food reserves and ensure national food security and income through quality marketing and storage services. The Zambian model has a strict mandate of buying and holding only national strategic commodity reserves to meet acute local shortages in supply. Another example is Tanzania's National Food Reserve Agency, with a mandate of ensuring food security. Some other countries have food or grain reserves to address emergency food crisis situations. The time is apt to put machineries in place for the development of the agricultural sector. The National Food Reserve Agency bill is one of the tools to make this possible, especially in a period of flood, famine, and other emergency situations. The bill recognizes the need to fill the apparent gap in agricultural development and coordination programs and projects.
Senator Dixon Siraki, you are just becoming an attraction center. All our ladies from both sides. Okay. Thank you, Senator Nora.
The bill recognizes the need to fill the apparent gap in agricultural development and coordination of programs and projects in the country with the collaboration of national and international agencies. A well-managed strategic grain reserve will stabilize stable food prices for the benefit of the consumers and farmers alike. Therefore, establishing an agency for this purpose is very essential to enhance food and nutrition security. Objectives. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, agriculture Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, agriculture plays a pivotal role in the development and growth of every nation. Any country seeking to diversify its economy, alleviate poverty, create jobs, and ensure food security should prioritize agriculture. Recognizing the important role agriculture plays, Nigeria has made efforts to place the sector at the fore by introducing different intervention programs and policies backed by enabling laws made by this other chamber. A further step to be taken to ensure food security in our country at all times is formulate enabling laws that will address food insecurity. This bill seeks to establish the National Food Reserve Agency for the purposes of storing food grains and other food commodities for strategic purposes. By this bill, where the President declares a national food emergency, the agency is empowered to release food stock. It also makes provision to meet other food emergencies caused by drought or flood or any other national disaster as may be declared by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The bill also empowers the agency to facilitate and provide guidelines for the establishment and maintenance of buffer stock in order to ensure price stabilization and food security and correct problems relating to the supply of designated commodities. With food reserves, food can be available to the most vulnerable population in times of crisis, while buffer stocks attempt to offset price movements and act as universal subsidies benefiting both the poor and the non-poor consumers. Recommendations. The bill, which is made up of 34 clauses, is divided into 5 parts. Part 1 deals with the establishment clause. Part 2 deals with the functions and powers of the agency. Part 3 establishes zonal offices. Part 4 specifies the appointment of the Director General and other staff. It also has a schedule and explanatory memoranda. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the committee strongly recommends that the passage of this bill into law will provide a legal backing and regulatory framework for the establishment of National Food Reserve Agency. In conclusion, the committee would like to thank the Senate President, Deputy Senate President, the entire Senate leadership, and the distinguished colleagues for the opportunity given to us to serve in this capacity. Thank you.
Leader of the Senate.
Legislative and concurrent and any other enumerated portion of the Act, the Supreme Court in the total of cases has considered the position, and I will make reference to the National Urban and Regional Planning Law. It was declared null and void by the Supreme Court because there is no legislative item on it, and to the contention that agriculture is the exclusive legislative list. I want to say that if on the concurrent legislative list, even on the concurrent legislative list, there is a section for the state, there is a section for the federal government on concurrent list. So it is only the part that has to do with, I want to refer to paragraph H on the amplitude of the power of National Assembly in relation to agriculture. Yes.
Zaf, does it belong to states exclusively that we cannot legislate on it? Where is it written?
Back to section 4, subsection Section 4, subsection 7, paragraph A. The House of Assembly of a state shall have power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the state or any part thereof with respect to the following matters. That is to say, A, any matter not included in the exclusive legislative list set out in Part 1 of the second schedule to the Constitution. So to the extent that the issue is not on the exclusive legislative list, and I also further my argument that paragraph H in this concurrent legislative list did not also vest the same power expressly in the National Assembly with respect as desirable as the law may be, as an example may be made to foreign jurisdiction, will be acting ultra-virus the Constitution if you go ahead and consider the bill.
Plea is co-joined with the state legislatures in the concurrent legislative list. Can't we use that as a basis to legislate on food reserve for the federal government?
Is that even I refer again back to the Constitution, that the power of National Assembly on concurrent legislative list is also circumscribed. The fact that an item is listed on the concurrent legislative list does not mean that both the federal and the state has the power to make law. That has always been the general understanding. I will refer to section 4, subsection 4, paragraph A. It says, in addition, and without prejudice to the powers conferred by subsection 2 of this section, the National Assembly shall have power to make laws with respect to the following matters. That is to say, any matter in the concurrent legislative list set out in the first column of Part 2 of the second schedule to this Constitution, to the extent prescribed in the second column opposite thereto. If Mr. Chairman and the Senator look at concurrent list, there are two columns. There's a section for the state, even on the same subject matter. There's a section for the federal government on the same subject matter. And on the issue of agriculture, I refer us to the concurrent legislative list, paragraph H, that talks about industrial, commercial, or agricultural development. He made express provision as to the extent and amplitude of the federal National Assembly power in that regard. And I read section paragraph 17. The National Assembly may make laws for the federation or any part thereof with respect to A, the health, safety, and welfare of persons employed to work in factories, offices, or other premises, or in interstate transportation and commerce, including the training, supervision, and qualification of such persons. B, regulation of ownership and control of business enterprises throughout the Federation for the purpose of promoting, encouraging, or facilitating such ownership and control by citizens of Nigeria. C, establishment of research centers for agricultural studies, research centers, and the establishment of institutions and bodies for the promotion or financing of industrial, commercial, or agricultural projects. Promotion and financing. That is especially what is provided in the exclusive legislative list. So I'm submitting, sir, we expect that the mere mention of agriculture on the exclusive legislative list. Okay, sir.
From my experience as the staff of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, the subject we are discussing today is a subject that is hierarchical. And so we are talking about the highest level, which all over the world is being controlled by the central government. What this agency seeks to do is to even ask, what is even the mandate of this agency? And Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, if you look at page, I think it's page 5, page 5, which talks about the mandate of the agency. If you look at it, you will know that we understand the responsibilities of the state, and it says, for example, first, implement the overall national food reserve policy to ensure a reliable supply of designated commodities and meet local shortfalls in the supply of the designated agricultural commodities in the country. This is taken from the perspective of national food security. And if you look at national food security, you cannot say, oh, a state is the one to provide all the food. No. It is a system designed to ensure that at all times, a country is able to guarantee that food will be supplied and available to its members. If this is true, then where do you take the primary purpose of governance to mean the welfare and security of the citizens? Can you talk about security and welfare of the citizens without food? No. So will a country not have a strategy? Today we are having a serious security challenge. If you look at the Northeast is not able to meet the normal agricultural production cycle that we are used to. And if you look at it, because of that, it has now enhanced the availability of food. It has affected it. To that extent, if you look at the MBS report, you will see that the price of food is going up. The essence of this agency is to make sure that we have a food reserve agency that we guarantee at least a food reserve. If you remember when we started this pandemic, the federal government released 60,000 tons from the national reserve. So I want to say that clearly, the essence of this particular bill is to make sure that we have a national framework that we ensure that we don't allow our citizens to fall short when we have any crisis. So the essence of this bill is definitely in line with our mandate, and I want to urge that our colleagues, we should just go ahead and do the needful.
I patiently and quietly listen to the arguments of my learned friends, who seems to be very prepared to go against this bill, raising fundamental constitutional issues. There is no doubt about the fact that this agency is needed at the national level. No doubt about that. And you can only fault the argument of Senator Jibola if you also raise the Constitution, provisions of the Constitution to counter him, not about sentiments. Mr. President, my highly respected colleagues, even in the Supreme Court, when lawyers counter one another, at the end of the day, the Supreme Court, people who have read law, people who have been sitting as judges, rising from High Court to the Court of Appeal to Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, when the arguments become too tough, they will adjourn. They will adjourn to give a ruling. Mr. President, because of the way the preparedness of Senator Jibola on this matter, raising legal issues, I would rather advise. I am a lawyer like him too, but I'm not that prepared on a day like this to counter him as much as I need this agency to be in existence. Mr. President, today is Wednesday. The next sitting day will be Tuesday. I don't think it will be too late. The establishment of this agency is so urgent that between now and Tuesday, if it is not fast, then there will be full crisis in this country. Mr. President, my humble appeal, I want to know what this my learned friend is talking about. Because he's raising serious constitutional issues. But sentiments cannot counter effectively what the points that he's raising. So my humble advice, Mr. President, on this occasion, is for us to, I wanted the senator, the chairman of the committee, who is also a lawyer, to also use the same constitutional points to counter his arguments. But it's like, it sounds like, it's ready now? Oh, you are ready now. But even then, Mr. President, yes, even then, Mr. President, I will advise that these arguments and counter-arguments, we can step it down briefly Then by the chairman of the committee on judiciary is also there. So I wouldn't know. That is my humble advice, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
You can imagine for the emotions and sentiments expressed by our dear colleague. But specifically, I want the Senate to take a look at the concurrent legislative list, which is the core matter. And section 17, or sub 17 of that, 17 from C, I read, that's from the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The establishment of research centers for agricultural studies, that's what the National Assembly can do. The establishment of institutions and bodies for the promotion or financing of industrial, commercial, or agricultural projects. 18, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, a House of Assembly may make laws for that state with respect to industrial, commercial, or agricultural development of the state. Nothing in the foregoing paragraphs of this item shall be construed as precluding a House of Assembly from making laws with respect to any of the matters referred to in the foregoing paragraphs. So the issue here is nobody is saying a state cannot make law in regard to subject matter. But if they dare do, and the law they make it goes in conflict with the laws made by the National Assembly in regard to the same subject matter, the laws will make supersede. That's the position of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Just completely with the position taken by the chairman of the committee. But I will also add that in addition to situations where there's inconsistencies or conflicts with the provisions of laws made by the Houses of Assembly and that of National Assembly, there's also the doctrine of covering the field. Now, what that means in effect is that if the National Assembly were to move first, as is being done here now by the committee, then the Houses of Assembly, even though they have the power provided here under the concurrent provisions of the Constitution, that field is already covered. And there's a preemption already, meaning that they can no longer make any law with respect to this subject matter once the National Assembly has done so. So in a nutshell, I align myself with the position of the chairman of the committee. This is constitutional. We have the powers to make this law. I so submit. Thank you.
And a lot has gone in introducing this bill for an act to establish this National Food Reserve Agency. It's not as if we don't have a structure that does exactly what we are trying to do, but it is still a department in the Ministry, Federal Ministry of Agriculture. And the purpose of this bill is to escalate it to a level for it to be a separate agency with more powers to recover more grounds. But listening to the argument of our colleague, I want to align myself with what James Major said. And it brings to the fore our inability to synergize with agencies we have. The National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies is an institute that if this bill or something has been able to go through them, they have the competent manpower, the legal, to actually look at this, and because it will be very embarrassing. We passed a bill that is sent to the executive, and they turn it down. We have suffered a lot of humiliation and embarrassment before. So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, it will not cost us anything to step it down and do the needful, so that once after we are all in support of this, but let us not again embarrass ourselves. Thank you, Mr. President.
This is democracy at work. And let me also place on record that the distinguished member who presented the report upon which we are holding this committee of the whole is a well-respected member of this Senate, former governor, eminent elder statesman, who also has done so much to guide the process of legislation in this place. So, by no means, he means well. I also want to place on record, sir, there is a most senior lawyer within and outside of this chamber. Both his good self, as well as our other colleagues who raised this constitutional point of order, are members of a committee of this Senate that is supposed to guide the Senate in the process of legislation, especially when we're in a matter like this, the Committee on Judiciary and Legal Matters. As a matter of fact, Your Excellency, most of the lawyers who are here, members of the Judiciary Committee, who were supposed to have left for screening at 12 noon, stayed back to guide this process because of the issue on the floor. My appeal, sir, will be, let us step this matter down for just a legislative day. And then we'll call a meeting of the committee, as a matter of fact, a joint meeting of both the Committee on Agriculture that prepared this report, as well as the Committee on Judiciary, where both of them are members. Sir, I am saying this for the record. Sir, I request for your protection, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, let me remind distinguished members that this is not about influence. This is not about sentiment or emotions. One of the worst things that can happen to us is that a member will raise a constitutional point of order on this thing, will not be able to handle it in a way that such a member himself will be convinced and Nigeria will be convinced. We have been here for almost 2 years. And under your word, sir, no member has come out of this chamber to go to the courtroom to go and file anything. We don't need any situation where it will appear that we cannot handle our affair. Stepping this down for a legislative day will not kill anybody. And that's my humble submission. Thank you, sir.
All the interventions, and honestly, my understanding is we can legislate. That's my understanding. Even those who are suggesting that we stand this thing down until we have a clearer picture, I'm not saying we don't have the power to legislate. Because my understanding of concurrent legislative list is that we can legislate. So could the State House of Assembly, the state legislatures. And I don't see how the Constitution prevents us from legislating on food reserve in the country. Every country, the food reserve is the business of the government at the center. In every country. Can we really afford to just leave it to be everybody's business? I don't think we can afford to just leave the food reserve issue in Nigeria to state governments. After all, the state governments run to the federal government. So my view. Sorry? That what? Okay, read it.
Section 5. With your permission, Mr. President, I will read. If any law enacted by the House of Assembly of a state is inconsistent with any law validly made by the National Assembly, the law made by the National Assembly shall prevail, and that other law shall, to the extent of inconsistency, be void. So it means, it talk about the concurrent legislative list. Yes, it talk about the concurrent legislative list, and the House of Assembly shall have power to make law for peace, order, and good government of the state, or in any part thereof, and in respect of the following matters, that is to say, it listed all the matters that State House of Assembly has power to. So, Mr. President, what I'm saying is that the Food Reserve Agency is a federal government affair. National Food Reserve Agency. States can have their own. They can make law and set up Food Reserve Agency. But it doesn't prevent the federal government from doing the same thing, or the national government. So it is very much in order. And if they make law that is inconsistent with the law of the National Assembly, then that law cannot stand. This is the Constitution. So we should go ahead and consider this bill, Mr. Chairman.
That we should rather legislate to protect the country by way of ensuring that there is food reserve at any time, then allow it just open like this for anybody to just maybe legislate, especially at the state level, which I'm sure will be looking up to the federal government for some kind of support, some kind of assistance. So my ruling will be, and this will be in keeping or in consonance with our Standing Order 25H, that I interpret the rules or the point of constitutional point of order our colleague raised, that we don't have such powers. I think the National Assembly has such powers. I think the emergency in our country requires that we do everything and anything possible to rescue, protect the lives and security of the people of this country. I'm not a lawyer, but I've listened to all the arguments, and I believe that we should go ahead, do our legislation. If anyone outside feels that the legislation is wrong, that person can go to the courts so that the legislation is nullified. And that is going to be a practice of democracy. But I believe that Nigeria at the moment needs this kind of legislation. That is my ruling. So we go through the report. Those in favor that clause 1 stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. Corrected. Okay, there was a correction. There shall, I think correction as corrected by Senator Jones Manager. Those in favor of clause 1 as amended, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those in favor of clause 2, say aye. The clause 2 stands part of the bill, say aye. Amendment. Those in favor that clause 2 as amended stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. DSP, please you take over.